The Mexican-American War acted as one of America's steps towards becoming a world power. Mexico was a Europeanized military power and vastly outnumbered America, and thus the results of this war shocked the entire civilized world. In 1845, the United States annexed Texas. Until the Texas Revolution in 1836, Texas was a part of the Empire of Mexico. Mexico elected not to observe the annexation and treated Texas as a Mexican territory. According to the Treaty of Velasco, Texas owned territory all the way up to the Rio Grande. Mexico argued that the border was actually supposed to be at the Nueces River, thus creating an overlap of territorial claims. Also in 1845, tensions became higher when John C. Fremont took a group of settlers into California. Mexico was furious with this and told Fremont to leave. In retaliation, Fremont left and returned a few months later with the California Battalion. The loss of both Texas and California angered Mexico, leading to war. In July, General Zachary Taylor led American forces into the Nueces Strip to establish the Mexico-Texas border by force. In November, President James K. Polk sent Representative John Slidell to Mexico to purchase these territories for $25 to $30 million. As Mexican leadership changed rather often during this time, 4 presidents, 6 war ministers, and 16 finance ministers in just 1 year, many in Mexico believed that selling the territories would be a dishonor to their country, so they refused to sell. In April of 1846, Mexican forces ambushed a small American force led by Captain Seth Thornton near Brownsville, killing 12 and capturing 52 of the 80-man group. Mexico believed that the border between the two countries was at the Nueces River, so they maintained that the Americans were in Mexican territory. This became known as the Thornton Affair. Polk famously argued that Mexicans had slaughtered U.S. forces on American soil and asked Congress to declare war. The following month, Mexican artillery laid siege to Fort Texas. General Taylor led the troops to relieve the fort, but was intercepted by the Mexican General Arista at Palo Alto. Taylor won the skirmish by using flying artillery, light artillery mounted on horses. However, by the Battle of Palo Alto, Mexican artillery was able to overwhelm the Americans. Nonetheless, America won. The Battle of Resaca de la Palma resulted in American forces finally capturing the Mexican artillery. After the war broke out, Antonio Lopez de Santa Anna came up with a scheme to put himself back in power. He promised the Mexican government he would not take over if they let him out of exile to lead the army. Despite his betrayals, corruption, and various military failures, the Mexicans welcomed him back as a hero. Santa Anna also negotiated a deal with the Americans to allow him through their blockade in exchange for selling them the territories of New Mexico and California. Once he reached Mexico City, he went back on his deal. American General Stephen Kearney was sent to invade the Mexican territories of Nuevo Mexico and Alta California. His troops entered and annexed New Mexico without firing a single shot. Kearney led most of his troops on to California, leaving some to govern the new territory. In New Mexico, some locals devised an uprising. They broke into the house of the governor of New Mexico and scalped him in front of his family before killing him when he tried to escape. America quickly responded, sending Colonel Price to snuff out the rebellion. In California, many settlers feared an attack by the Mexican General Castro. In an attempt to discourage any attack, they took over the Mexican government outpost in Sonoma. The settlers raised the now famous Bear Flag over the outpost, giving the insurrection its name of the Bear Flag Revolt. The U.S. Pacific Fleet, under the command of Commodore John Sloat, took over Mexican ports in California, and by August 13, 1846, California was declared free of Mexican rule. The Battle of Monterey had one of the highest casualty counts of the war. Americans were totally unprepared for the urban warfare. Some Texans, known to the Mexicans as Diabolicos Tejanos, had fought in a Mexican town during the Texas Revolution, and so they told the other Americans to mousehole Mexican houses, which means to break into the buildings and fight in hand-to-hand combat. U.S. forces won the battle and agreed to an armistice to allow Mexicans to evacuate the city in exchange for the city's surrender. Taylor broke the armistice and occupied the city after Polk and the government disapproved of his making it in the first place. The Battle of Buena Vista was Santa Anna's last hope of holding northern Mexico. He had 15,000 troops to Taylor's 4,600. Taylor's forces managed to hold on to their position, especially due to the Mississippi Rifles, led by Jefferson Davis. The first and second battles of Tabasco saw Commodore Matthew Perry first retreat and then come back and defeat Mexican defenses, finally seizing the fort at San Juan Bautista. In 1847, the United States performed its first ever major amphibious landing at Veracruz. A force of 12,000 led by General Winfield Scott and consisting of soon-to-be famous war heroes such as Robert E. Lee and Ulysses S. Grant, not to mention many other Civil War heroes, landed on the Mexican shore. Between Scott's army forces and Perry's naval forces, Veracruz surrendered in a little under 2 weeks. The Americans marched on towards Mexico City, capturing Puebla with absolutely no resistance. During the siege of Mexico City, a few young military cadets were rumored to have stayed and fought the attacking Americans. After Mexico City fell, Santa Anna launched a final desperate attempt to defeat the Americans. On October 9, 1847, at the Battle of Huamantla, Santa Anna was finally defeated. The Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo ceded what was to become New Mexico, California, Arizona, Utah, Colorado, and Nevada to the United States for $15 million. The treaty officially established the Rio Grande as the border between Texas and Mexico. America also agreed to assume the debts of Mexico to American citizens. While the Mexican-American War did settle many disputes between the two countries, it paved the way for a split in the United States. The inevitable Civil War was fast approaching, and this war served as but a foreshadowing of the bloodshed that was to come on the American battlefields. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to like and subscribe. I'm Matthew, and I hope I'll see you next time.
Goodbye, goodbye, went a tear, baby dear, from your eye. Though it's hard to part, I know, I'll be sick of the death to go. Don't cry, don't sigh, there's a silver lining in the sky. Bonsoir, old thing, cheerio, chin chin, na boo toodaloo, goodbye.